What is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court for today. I am Sean Murphy, joined by a special guest for a special episode of the pod, joined by the head of recruiting at SMU, but also a basketball coach in his own right, Coach Jeremie Hart, aka Coach Hart on Twitter, Coach Hart 32 to be specific.
Yeah.
Coach, thank you so much for taking the time. It's good to see you. And thanks again for just being willing to come here and, talk about your relationship and story of, Dannis Jenkins.
Oh, no problem, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate your time and appreciate you reaching out. And I enjoy getting our story out there. And I've always told him that one day he's gonna have a tremendous story to be able to encourage and motivate young players around the world. And here we are, and we still at the beginning of it. So I'm grateful and thankful.
Yeah, for sure. It feels like this week has really been when Dannis Jenkins has been put on the national map. Like if you're like a Pistons fan who's tuned in or follows the team pretty regularly, you're
Yeah.
familiar with Dannis Jenkins from summer league or from preseason, seeing him, really kind of, show up, and especially if you go to cruise games. But if you haven't seen Dannis Jenkins before, if you don't know much about him, I think he's shown exactly what he's capable of this last week. Let's start. I want to start with, for those that might not know, what is your relationship with Dannis Jenkins, and how did you guys originally meet?
I mean, I'm his player development coach, but I look at him as family. His mom, his brother, his sister, they're all family to me. He's not just a client; he's a little brother of mine's. I met him back in his senior year in high school. So we're pretty much family at this point. We kind of been through everything together. That's what I would say.
Yeah, for sure. And as a player, like, obviously he's kind of shown himself to be, multifaceted, kind of like a natural, point guard. Like,
Mhm.
where would you say, like, you've noticed kind of just like over time, where have you seen kind of like the most growth in his game from your perspective?
I would say from my perspective, I've seen him grow tremendously. Just more so than anything, like his confidence in decisions. He's getting better and better at being confident in the decisions that he's wanting to make on the court, and trusting his work and the process. He's grown tremendously in different areas of the game, but I think overall, just his readiness to be ready to play, no matter what the circumstances are, and being mentally sharp and focused, and staying true to himself throughout this process. I've seen him continuously grow throughout that area since he's turned pro.
Yeah, for sure. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think from our conversations earlier, you mentioned that, there weren't really many or, scholarship offers to speak of when Dannis was going into college. And, when coming into the pros, he went undrafted and having to be a two-way player. That's, a really difficult way to get to the league. The G League is not for the faint of heart. It's
Hmm.
not, not an easy lifestyle, but for those dedicated, you really have to, stay ready. And, when you have your opportunity, maximize them. And it kind of just seems like from the beginning, that's just kind of what Giannis has been all about and been able to do.
Yeah, for sure. A few things that we've talked about over the years is just understanding that everything happened for a reason. God put things in our way or in our path on our journey, for us to learn from, to grow from, to mature from. And I think we both have matured and grown a lot. Me as a coach, him as a player, by the obstacles or things that's been placed in our lives. And I'm tremendously proud of him and his perseverance and his faith in God and his hard work that he's put in to put himself in this position. Like you said, he had zero scholarships offers out of high school. He was going to a junior college, and ended up going to an unsigned senior event, and he got a scholarship to Pacific University. Played for Damon Stoudemire for 2 years. Had 2 good years there, and ended up going to Odessa Junior College, having to come home and go to a JUCO. Was a JUCO All American, first team JUCO All American, and then from there, Rick Pitino gets the job at Iona. He recruits him, and he goes to Iona with Rick, and goes to follow him to St. John's, and the rest has been history. But I told him in pre-draft, I remember a conversation I told with him. I said that everything that you've been through up to this point has prepared you for what you're now about to get into in the NBA, because it's hard. And we had those talks about how hard the NBA is, how hard it is to come in undrafted, and the things that's going to be in front of him. But I always reassured him that, you know, what you've been through is why you're going to get through it, and you're going to have a hell of a story, and a lot of people around the world are going to be motivated by you, and you're just going to do tremendous things and play such a long time in the NBA. And all of these things I spoke into him, and he believed, and I believed, and again, here we are. And it's still early in his career, but I'm super proud of what he's accomplished so far.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that stands out to me about Dannis, just from covering him, from the from interviewing coaches and hearing, I've been able to talk to both JB and Jamel now, the coach of the Pistons and the Crews respectively, about
Mhm.
Dannis Jenkins and just getting their perspective. Jamel, he gave like a multi-minute response and was just absolutely raving about him. JB's was about 40 seconds. I actually, it's from last night, and I do just kind of want to show it real quick because I think it's just a great, just description, just of Dannis and what he's done thus far in a short time. So let me just play this real quick.
Yes, sir.
JB, another guy who had a really good night tonight, yet again, was Dannis Jenkins, stepping into a elevated role offensively, doing a lot of what he does with the Motor City Crews. What did you just make of his disposition on both sides of the court tonight?
I mean, he's got an unwavering belief in his abilities. You sit and talk to him, like you can feel his presence as soon as he walks into the room. And it's not phony. You know what I mean? Like he is genuinely confident, but humble at the same time. And he's extremely talented. We've said it. We're lucky to have him here in the position that he's in. He's an NBA player. I think the league knows that. But we're lucky to have him here with us.
That feel pretty spot on about who Dannis is as a player and as a person.
Man, is very spot on, and super humbling and rewarding to hear, Coach JB speak of him in that manner.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, I mean, that's, pretty much a microcosm of how I've heard a lot of coaches, like speak about Dannis. And just, I think one of the most common themes and one of the, like, and even, obviously, I think you probably just see this the most is just his moldability as a player and his eagerness of looking for, areas to improve, in
Mhm.
all areas of his game. Has that always just been, who Dannis was? And like, where do you think like that just stems from?
I think it stems that one is always who he's been, and two, it stems from, he's he's always been a type of player and person, that he wanted to get better. He's never thought he had it all figured out. He's always been eager to learn and listen. When we met, one of our first conversations, I asked him if he had a trainer, if he worked with anyone, and he told me no. And but he would love to work with me his senior year, and we started working out. And he would show up on time, early. He listened to me. He let me coach him hard, and that's just been who he is. So to hear an NBA coach speak about him in that manner, it takes me back to 5 6 years ago when we met. And just I'm grateful and happy, the world is seeing who I've saw for a long time.
Yeah. And in his first real run, for all intents and purposes, these last two games, I mean, there was the 20 plus minutes against Cleveland, but that game was kind of already out of hand by that point.
Mhm.
So like these were, two significant opportunities where, if the Pistons were to win these games, which a lot of people chalked both of them up to be losses with just the amount of injuries. He came in and didn't allow that to happen. I mean, he averaged in those 2 games, he averaged 21 points, 3 steals, 7.5 assists, 6 boards, shot 50% from 3, and like an average like 50% from the field. So he's doing it on both ends. He's all over the court, and he's doing all the hustle things on top of that too. And it feels like that year with the Crews. I remember Coach Jamel talking about how, there were struggles at first and it wasn't easy from the beginning, but his growth through that process is a big part of what, is allowing him to blossom and be the player he is now. From your perspective, from that season, what do you think the biggest growth and evolution was in his game to become who we're seeing on the NBA floor?
I would say I think he got stronger mentally. He's already was a mentally strong player, but obviously the NBA is hard, right? And transitioning to being a pro is hard. So I think his understanding quickly of being a pro is hard and what it takes to be a pro and be consistent every day is hard. And I think he adapted to that. He went through some woes in the beginning of the year. Obviously me and him talked through them. He talked through them with the coaches and things of that nature. And he was able to get comfortable, get familiar with the pro game. He watched a lot of film, put in extra work. In the summertime we prepared the right way. So and he's a kid that once he gets into an environment and he's able to adapt, he's gonna do well. So I wasn't surprised that the second part of the season with Motor City was way better than the first part of the season. And I'm not surprised that the second summer league was better than the first summer league. And I'm not surprised that the second year in the NBA has been better than the first year in the NBA. Just because I know him, I'm in awe of the things that he's doing because I'm able to see it all unfold. Things that we've talked about and prayed about and things of that nature. But I'm not surprised about by none of it.
Yeah, for sure. It's one thing to, talk about doing it and, and to put in the work for when that opportunity comes. It's
Hmm.
the other thing to actually seize the moment and to maximize those opportunities, which, I'd argue he really did, especially, like I know the Washington game where he made that huge shot, was like one that people are going to look at. And, I thought that was a fantastic game. Don't get it twisted, but
Hmm.
I was a lot more impressed by the Chicago game because to me, that felt like the Dannis Jenkins we saw in summer league, that we saw
Hmm.
on the cruise, that we saw
Hmm.
in the preseason. Like that was him. And I even said it in the question, like that was him running the show like he
Hmm.
would with the cruise. And that felt like a 40-minute audition tape and resume saying, I
Hmm.
am an NBA level point guard.
Hmm. For sure, I 100% agree. And like you said, we talked about relishing the opportunities and things that comes in front of us, and we always talk about staying ready so you don't have to get ready. So again, I'm not surprised at how he played because I know he's prepared. He's done the work. Everybody who kind of knows me and knows us, our slogan is trust your work, and I always talk about trusting your work because that's what you can lean on when it's game time, and then when you're out there is the work, the amount of work that you put in, and that gives you confidence and that gives you faith. And that's what he does, night in and night out every time he gets an opportunity. And when he doesn't get an opportunity, he's still putting in extra work and watching extra film, being prepared, staying focused, having the right energy around the team, so he doesn't get completely out of it, because it's an up and down season. It's 82 games. So, again, just super proud.
Yeah. I think with the level of play, that we've seen from Dannis thus far, I think it's going to be hard for him to go back down to the cruise for much of, any time, especially if guys are going to continue to be out for a while. I imagine Dannis will continue to get run, in the league. But the tricky thing about a two-way contract is I know there's like a certain amount of limits that you can play in
Mhm,
the league. I think,
mhm,
obviously they're like they're not even close to touching that yet. But there's the interesting dichotomy of like a two-way contract is one night you could be playing in Madison Square Garden on national television, with Spike Lee, some of the biggest celebrities in the world courtside. And
Right.
then next night you could be playing in the G League in Idaho in like a warehouse that's fashioned to be an arena, like the kind of that, that duality of the G League and the NBA. Like,
Yep.
how do you kind of like, continue to keep that same, like focus and energy and determination, if he's playing at the Garden than if he's playing in Aunt Diane's garden?
Well, that goes back to the journey, right? And again, as I take you through there, it goes back to the journey. He went from playing at Odessa Junior College to where is a similar, if you want to compare Odessa Junior College games to a G League game, you're playing in a junior college with 50 people in the gym, in a dark little gym and wherever. And Odessa is, for people who don't know, is in West Texas in a small little country town. So that's the G League comparison. And then you earn your way up to Iona in St. John's, and now you're playing your home games at St. John's in Madison Square Garden against UConn, the number one team in the country. And so his journey has prepared him for those type of situations. So once he gets to the NBA, like playing in the Madison Square Garden one day, or then playing in Idaho another day, is nothing. It's nothing that he can't handle because he's been through it before, and his journey has prepared him for it.
Yeah. I think one thing that's obvious is, like when it comes to like Dannis, he clearly has NBA athleticism. He clearly
Mhm.
has NBA speed. The league is getting taller and taller, but still 6'3" guards are an NBA height, damn it. Like I know we're getting these crazy gargantuan, guys handling the ball now,
Right,
but he's
right,
still
right.
got good size for the league. Like
Yep.
he and especially with what we're seeing from the production, he's checking a lot of the boxes, that you need for that a team needs to see in
Mhm,
order for a player to earn that contract. But I did ask
mhm,
Dannis at Cruise Media Day, like where he thinks he needs to grow, before getting that contract.
mhm,
And the thing that he said was the turnovers
mhm,
and, taking care of the basketball. And I'm
mhm.
curious, just from your perspective, would you agree with that assessment? And what areas, do you think he, you know, like needs to continue to really pour into to become that player that he can really become?
Yes, I agree. That's something that we talk about as well. Him just being more confident in his decisions. I think that's where his turnovers come in. Him being indecisive, a little indecisive on his decision making about making the right read, but he can do everything on the basketball court. So long as he be confident and play with that confidence and swagger and trust in his work, his turnovers will be down. I think another area for him to improve is just continuing to know when to score and know when to pass, and being having a healthy balance of doing both and getting his teammates involved, and just understanding the flow of an NBA game and how to help his team, win games when he's on the floor and impact the game when he's on the floor and have a good plus minus when he comes out the game.
Yeah, for sure. I think definitely, one of the most interesting challenges I would say in modern basketball is the balance that point guards have to strike. Specifically because, back in the day it was a lot more, a lot more binary, a lot more black and white, if you will, offensively.
Hmm.
Point guards were there mainly to facilitate. But
Hmm.
now, like especially if you want to succeed in the modern NBA, you need a guard who can take you home, but also can
Hmm.
set up the dinner table, so to speak.
Yep.
And so, like I think, with Dannis, I think that's one thing, just from my observation of watching him play, that I think, he does well compared to a lot of kind of like those, like second unit guards, throughout the league, which is, kind of where his competition is at the moment. I have no doubt he could start, one day, or, like he could, expand his role to another level. But, those are kind of the jobs he's competing for at the moment. But I think his discernment in that area, I think he's already showing that, I think there would be multiple, teams in the NBA who wish they had a guard like a Dannis Jenkins.
Oh yeah, I agree. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. So I know it's one of the kind of like the trickiest things, or like the comparison game. It's it for a lot of guys, or for a lot of people who watch the game, I think it's like the easiest way to like understand what type of player someone
Hmm.
is, or like how they play the game, how they approach things,
Hmm.
etc. Um and I asked Jamel McMillan, and he said that he saw some correlations with Drew Holiday and how he approaches things. And and Jamel said that's, that Drew Holiday embodies everything he's about as a coach. So Dan is pretty much, he said the exact same thing.
Hmm.
Uh, Dan has said like a player he studied quite a bit is a CJ McCollum,
Hmm.
the way that he goes about the game. Do you see correlations between both of those players with how Dannis likes to attack things? And are there any players that maybe he's too young to know, or guys that you watch where you see some similarities?
No, I think both of those are pretty good similarities that we've always discussed. And me, from a coaching standpoint, I've always studied Drew Holiday and guys like CJ McCollum. I would throw Andrew Nimhart in there.
Yep.
These are guys that I study and take from to help him continue to get better as a player in the summertime when we're working together. So those three are pretty spot on for me as well.
Yeah, I think, and especially kind of like what's striking about, both of those guys, or all three of those guys when you bring them up, is, they're all able to make a play whenever's needed on both sides of the basketball, and they're not
Hmm.
afraid, of the moment. And
Hmm.
when the pressure's cooking, their game elevates a level, if
Hmm.
anything. And I mean, I think most players, if they're a two-way player and we're given that ball in the corner against the Wizards with like a second to go, I think a lot of them would have freaked out, and their shot would have hit the side of the backboard, or it would have not been pretty.
Hmm.
But especially when the play was not designed for them,
Yeah.
just straight up.
Yeah.
So to be able to like have that composure in that moment, especially in that role, like that's not common.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this. I can't I cannot simulate uh primetime in an NBA game against the Washington Wizards, with 1 second left. But what I can tell you is all summer long, he would come in, and this is just a little insight. He would come in, we would stretch him, get him ready to work out, and we would go directly into shooting corner threes on both sides of the floor. And the first time we did it, he kind of asked me like, why are we doing this, coach? And he would do it, but just asking me why. And I told him, I said, well, you're probably never going to start for the Pistons. You're going to always come off the bench, so you got to be able to come in the game cold and be able to make shots. And so I'm just want to simulate. The idea of coming into the gym, coming into a workout, and going straight into shooting without doing anything else, warming up like we normally do. So we tried something different this summer, and I felt like he's shooting the ball pretty well, and obviously he ended up making an incredible shot at a credible time, and I'm just grateful to be able to have seen it.
Yeah. He got up there on that shot too, man. One of the things that a lot of people pointed out, his vertical on that shot was insane.
Yeah,
He's got hops, man. If people aren't paying attention, he's sneaky athletic.
yeah, he's really athletic, man. I still don't think he's shown how athletic he is in the NBA game. He has a chance to, I think, with more minutes and more playing time. Like he's gonna do something to wow the crowd at some point because that kid is electric. And I think he haven't had a play just yet that I feel like that shows that from what I know personally. So I'm
Yeah.
excited to continue to see it.
I think one area you could see it though, from watching that Chicago game, I was really impressed with his slashing and with his ability to get to the rim and create separation. Like
Hmm.
he's always been able to do that, obviously, when he's played with the Crews. Like that's and he was able to do that in summer league. It's a
Hmm.
different thing to do it against NBA level defenders in a regular season game and
Hmm.
show, I can do this against the best of the best.
Hmm.
And
I
so
agree.
it might not have been like this crazy dunk or posterizer or, these ways that like people would normally associate with like, with
Yeah.
like the high athleticism, but
Hmm.
he's made really high effort, like, tight window, like saves from out of bounds. He's,
Yeah.
made a lot of
Yeah.
quick cuts and decisive passes. And that's the other
Yeah.
thing is he can throw a heater when it comes
Yeah.
to passing the basketball.
Yeah, I'll say this too. He is a really good shot blocking point guard too. Like man, he can get up and block some shots too. So I'm excited to continue. To hopefully he continues to get some opportunities and show these things that I know he can do. So I agree with you. He definitely can pass the ball.
Yeah, for sure. One thing, I think that's kind of helped with, like allowing Dannis to shine and really be the player that he's been. It seems like just Detroit as a whole has just been a really good fit about like who, kind of like Dannis is and just the way he plays basketball. Like he fits and embodies that Pistons DNA.
Hmm.
It didn't feel like that was a stretch for him at all. Do you feel like just kind of that fit and just that comfort and knowing exactly like what's being expected of him is just kind of allowed him to really just get comfortable and allow him to develop the way he has?
Yes, of course. I remember when the Pistons called on draft night and offered him a two-way, and we were all excited as a family together. And we actually talked about how, man, he couldn't have picked a better team and organization to go to because he fits Detroit style of basketball and what Detroit basketball in the city of Detroit is all about. So I was excited for that. He was excited for that. And then, like I talked about earlier, he's the type of kid where a young man rather, where he thrives once he's comfortable. And it's no coincidence that year two is off to the start that it is, because he's with the same coaches, the same staffs, he same players, and he's just more comfortable and he's a natural leader. No matter what position he's in, whether it's a two-way or whatever, he's still gonna be himself, and he's a leader. So people cling to that and follow that, and he's that's just who he is as a person.
Yeah, and he's got the trust of the Cade Cunninghams, the Jalen Durans, the stars of this team, which, when guys know for a fact that they have someone who's classified as a two-way player that, that they can rely on and know that they can
Hmm.
go out and win games. And mind you, this isn't a team that's, just like an up and coming, oh, we hope we make the play in. Like
Hmm.
this is the first seed in the Eastern Conference who has legitimate aspirations to do things they haven't done in 2 decades, and
Yeah.
he's coming in and doing that.
Yep, yep, yep. It's so surreal, man. I can't put it into words. It's hard for me to find the words because, obviously this week has felt like a dream and a dream come true. So I know how it feels for me. So I can only imagine how it feels for him. And we both are just super excited and just super happy and blessed to be in the moment. And we don't take for granted of the opportunity and situation that he's in. And like we've been talking about the past couple of days, we just gonna try to continue to ride the wave and stay locked in and stay focused, but also being in the moment and being where our feet are.
Yeah, I was gonna, that's actually exactly where I kind of wanted to go next because I'm curious, just being a coach, especially when a player is having that level of success. This is kind of like, this is like the moments that you kind of like dream of as a kid,
Yeah.
right? To be able to come in and have, this type of window. And
Mhm.
I'm curious how you do allow a player to both like celebrate and find joy and happiness in this moment while also keeping your feet on the ground and continuing to do the exact same things that got you there in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, after he had the game that he had, we stayed on the phone for a minute, late that night, and celebrated and soaked it all in, and We text back and forth last night after the game. Didn't get to talk yet, but I just told him how proud I am of him, how much I love him, and encourage them to stay focused and stay focused on the things that he's done to put himself in this position, which I know he will. But at the same time, I want him to enjoy this moment because there's only 450 players in the NBA, and to be in that 1%, that true 1%, is truly a blessing. And so I want him to be able to um, enjoy the moment as well while staying focused and locked in and preparing for the Sixers tomorrow.
Yeah. And of those like 450 players, like only a fraction of them actually get tangible playing time or
No doubt,
actually have a role that are carved out in any capacity. So,
no doubt, no doubt.
yeah. So, yeah, I think with, like, what we're seeing, and just kind of I think with a lot of the character things, 'cause he already checks all those boxes in spades, all of his coaches and, people that talk about him just absolutely rave about him, with, like, his eagerness to defend, his jump shot that, that just looks like I mean, that definitely translates to the league based off of, kinda like what we've seen thus far, and the fact that he can kinda shoot from all 3 levels as well. And there's a comfort there with the mid range, which I know he's talked about too, where it's like, in this league, you're taught either, to shoot the three or get to the cup. But defenders instinctively are a lot less eager to contest on mid range shots. And there's a real window there. And it seems like Dannis has really kind of found a way to kind of take advantage of that.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. His mid range is pretty good, man. But again, it just stemmed from a lot of work, a lot of preparation, a lot of unseen hours over the years, and to put himself in this type to be this type of player, to be able to be a three-level scorer, and to do just about everything on the basketball court. That's something that we always talked about working on and developing and being just a complete point guard and complete basketball player. Obviously, he still has some strides to make, but I'm super proud and of the player that he's become right now.
Yeah, I think he's definitely putting some really good tape on, like putting really good tape out there and making, a phenomenal case for himself to stay in the rotation as guys continue to get back from injury and things like that. Because, he's making it, when you play that well, like how does a coach keep that player on the bench?
Yeah, yeah. I can't speak for JB and the staff and
Right.
front office, but all I can say is, he's going to continue to do that, and we're going to control what we can control and just be where our
Yep.
feet are, and let God take over the rest. So we can't worry about things we can't control, but we can worry about our energy, our effort, how we approach each day. So that's what we're going to continue to focus on.
Yep. I know, one thing Dannis, said that, kinda, like, keeps him motivated is when he walks in, to practice every day and he walks through the parking lot and, he gets out of his car and you see the cars, he sees the cars that, like, the Cades or the big contract guys, like, he might see the cars that those guys drive. Has he ever joked around and said what kinda car he'd wanna buy if he ever got the contract?
Man, I can't remember. I do know he loves trucks. That's kind of why he has a truck. But I can't remember if he ever joked around saying something about that. That might be something I need to ask him. I maybe need to ask him that one.
I mean, hey, you might need to start asking him a little bit more seriously because based off how he's playing, he might gotta get out that catalog, man. He might be shopping at a car soon.
Well,
Uh,
well, well. What I can say is he's a low maintenance young man. He's
yep,
not materialistic at all. He will play basketball if it wasn't no currency, and that's why me and him connected 6 years ago, and that's why we share a bond because we both love the game. We both carried a big chip on our shoulder, and we met each other at a time in our lives where he needed me and I needed him, and so It's been really, really special to see it all unfold. The one thing that we never talked about was making it to the NBA. When he was young, we just talked about the work and our approach, and how we would approach each day and trying to get better. So, like I said, just to see it all unfold is truly a blessing. But I know he definitely would get him something nice when that time comes.
Yeah, no question, man. And
He deserves it. He deserves it.
yeah, for sure. And this season's obviously just getting started, and what happens from here, it remains to be seen. But I know for a fact that a lot of Pistons fans are starting to become Dannis Jenkins fans over the course of the last few days, and I think a lot of NBA fans are starting to really become familiarized with him. So I know a lot of people here in Michigan and in Detroit are rooting for him. I'm definitely looking forward to continuing to cover him. And I thank you so much, for coming on and wanting to talk about, his story and just your guys' experiences. People can follow you at Coach Hart 32, and also, be sure to watch some SMU basketball. Who you guys got coming up on the schedule?
We got Butler on Saturday. Will be a ACC Big East matchup, so we're looking forward to that. Best team on our schedule so far. So we'll be at home on Saturday, and two games the following week after that, and then we hit the road to play four SEC schools in a row. So big games coming up. We're excited about it. And I'm excited about the Pistons and what they're doing as well. So I plan on making it up to Detroit sometime here soon, as it fits in my schedule. And when we play.
Yeah, most definitely. Gonna have to connect when that happens. But seriously, man, thank you so much for being here. And thank you to those who tuned in. Be sure you like this podcast so that the algorithm gets other people to see it and say, hey, that's pretty good. But also subscribe so you're not missing any of the content. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you guys next time from Half Court.